this happiness and frivolity, I'll ask members to take their seats, please, and sit down, including Mr. Mohi. Councillor Belford, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this March Regional Council meeting, and a warm welcome to all councillors and staff and members of the public. Morning, and all one of you, and let's get into the prayer, please. After lots of consultation with Councillor Bevan.
Guide our minds and hearts so that we will work for the good of our community and help all your people. Teach us to be generous in our outlook, courageous in face of difficulty, and wise in our decisions. We ask this grace through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Okay. Apologies, there being none, I think. Into notices. Now, I've had been thinking about a few things, and I did bring it up at the last meeting. I'm getting a little concerned at some of the language, etc., that's going on. Okay, we're heading into an election year, but I'm reading stuff in the papers, and I don't want to turn this into a big thing, but I do need to have my say here. Some of the letters that are being written, Councillor Belford in particular, talking about your colleagues in a way that may or may not be correct, certainly not appropriate, certainly challenging the intention of the code of conduct, etc. I just ask everyone to, an election year, okay, we do have the odd stoush up, etc., and there is a bit of pushing and shoving, granted, but can we just treat each other with a little bit more respect going forward? That's all I ask. We voted unanimously on a code of conduct. We all signed a document that we will represent the region. I don't think this is getting out of hand. I'm just reminding people to treat your fellow man with some care and respect going forward, if possible.
Could I just say, fellow man or woman for starters? The second thing is this a debatable issue, Chair? Because I think it's something that if you want to raise it, it should be debatable. And I would prefer, personally, for us to have had this discussion out of the formal meeting setting, but if you want to have it...
I don't need to debate it. I'm just reminding people, Councillor Barker, because there has been some things said that should not have been said in the media. Okay, we're big and ugly enough to look after ourselves, but the code of conduct is about respect, basically. It's hard to enforce. We've all agreed to it. I'm just saying, comments such as trapped in their hypocrisy, naming councillors for doing certain things, actually is inappropriate. That's all I'm saying. But simple as that.
But I'm starting from a different point, and that is that people have the right to defend themselves. You've mentioned a councillor's name, which I think steps it across a line, and when a person's name is mentioned, they should have the opportunity to respond and to clear it up, because there's some imputations of what you've said, and that's what worries me.
Fair enough, but then that same councillor, I did bounce that same councillor at the last meeting for some comments that were said that were inappropriate and not in the spirit of the meeting. We need to be able to debate and push and shove around this table. Absolutely, that's what we're here for. But I'm just cautioning people to, behave with some decorum. That's all I ask. I'll ask Councillor Belford to respond, and then we'll move on.
What we say in the public election context, I intend in the coming several months to announce my candidacy, which I'm not doing here today.
Well, you just have.
and B, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. I intend to characterize the voting and the reasons behind the voting as candidly and as forcefully as I can.
Okay, well I think now the lines are drawn, that's fair. Okay, let's move on. But I've had my say. Others may disagree with your view, Councillor, but let's deal with issue by issue. I think that's what we're going to end up doing. Other notices?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, just in relation to, this is a very last minute issue, in relation to item 11, adoption of the supporting accountability documents and the consultation document. Yesterday afternoon we sent you out a revised consultation document. We also sent that simultaneously back to Audit New Zealand. They came back late last night with more changes, which we have incorporated and sent back to them, but they cannot commit to getting us their audit letter clearance by about 9:45 this morning, which is when we had anticipated this item may come up. So can I ask that that be deferred until later on in the agenda, please, until we get that clearance?
So on that basis, then, can we bring forward? I understand Dr. Pearce will be here for 12:13. Will he be available?
Yeah,
he'll be available earlier.
Items 12, 13 and 14 and 15.
So he'll be available earlier?
Yes, he can be.
Righto.
Yeah.
Other notices?
Can I raise a point of order on that?
Point of order?
Well, it was a point of process, if you like. I noticed in the meeting that we have quite often people reporting entities, like we've got tourism reporting to us today on the agenda, and we do want to have regular reports from tourism, but I don't want the reports from tourism and other people coming here to the council cramping the debate that we have about really important issues. So my view is that given we have every councillor attends, for example, corporate and strategic, my view is that why don't we consider asking the reports, for example, from tourism, to go to corporate and strategic, and then the council itself hears the response from corporate and strategic, so it's a narrower item, and leaves us with more space to debate the bigger things and less pressure on at this council meeting. Because I think we should be clearing as much clutter as we can out of this council meeting, enable us to have good and fulsome debates. That's my view. And I'd like us to have some discussion about it, our process now.
Well, we can consider that. I think that probably makes some sense. The reason that this item is early this morning is Mr. Hickton is here, has some time constraints. Okay, we're working around him, but we haven't heard from the chairman for quite some time. So I think your idea is a good one. I don't think we need to debate it. We can action that.
Yeah, we can certainly put it, schedule it for a corporate and strategic meeting.
And all the others. So the committees report to council what they've discussed, and when we're at corporate and strategic, we've got more time and space to discuss these things. I think it'd be much better, actually.
Righto. No further notices. Conflict of interest declarations. Confirmation of the, if there are none. Confirmation of the minutes. Just reading these minutes, I will ask the Secretary to take out the word secretarial note. Otherwise, is someone happy to move their true and correct record? I'm happy to move. Seconder. Thank you.
You can't second it.
No, you're not here, no.
I'm not seconding them either. We'll get another controversy again.
Absolutely. So you're happy to second. Sorry, Councillor Bevan, I was looking intently at you and you wondering why you weren't nodding. Yeah, that's why. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Matters arising from those minutes. Councillor Bevan.
Thank you, Chair. If we go back to the original motion that was passed on this matter, to the agreement in principle to take 4 million cubic metres for environmental flows in the Tuki-Tuk, it was subject only to a demonstration that the cash flows from the income from the $80 million investment would adequately cover the cost of buying that water. Now we have a second resolution, the one for which the minutes have just been approved, and if I look at the motion that was actually passed, the first of the resolutions, that the decision to enter into a 35-year water user contract with the partnership as proposed in the letter, etc., be open to a special consultative process. So it doesn't say it's subject to a special consultative process, and I'm not sure what the status is of that. So does it mean that we go through a consultative process and that the original motion is subject to that process? So if the public say to us, we don't want you to do this, we can then withdraw from it?
So the original decision, excuse me, was in principle, you're right, councillor, and originally just subject to that confirmation from Deloitte. So in the discussion...
And the project proceeding.
Oh yes, and obviously in the project proceeding. Thank you, councillor. And now the third part of it was around the decision to consult on it. So I accept that there could be an interpretation that it's not subject to, but normal practice, if it's an in principle decision, in this case it would not be confirmed until after, confirmed or otherwise, until after the public consultation process. So that would be an important part of it.
So, if I'm to interpret what you just said, then the original motion that was passed is now also subject to the consultation process. So what I'm trying to get a very clear public understanding of this is that if one of the institutional investors in the meantime agrees to make the investment as a co-investor in this dam, they have a very clear understanding that the council is not at this point in time committed to taking and buying those 4 million cubic metres.
That's absolutely correct.
And you could confirm that in a question later today too, of course.
Could I just suggest it would be helpful if the interim chief executive's response to that question was recorded in the minutes? That would satisfy everybody. With me? It's a clear statement to that effect. Bang, it's there, there's no argument to that.
Done. Okay. No further matters arising. Let's now then go to follow-up items.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll hand over to Mr. Maxwell and Mr. Palmer for the first 4 to tag team. Thanks.
So I'll just cover off my few there. So just the legal advice for the Waihi Dam. At this point, the advice from our litigation team is we can't release that, but just note that the advice given to us confirms that our approach is appropriate in accordance with the law. I understand we're going to be discussing the cost benefit and the deep drilling program as part of the annual plan adoption shortly, so I'll cover that. We can come to that later. The water symposium with Minister Smith and the region yesterday, we've decided to move that out towards the end of the year. It's still scheduled or still planned, we just haven't confirmed a date, but it'll be towards the end of the calendar year.
Question? When you said confirms that in the first part of your thing, what is that?
You're talking about the legal advice?
Yes, before you talked about the legal advice, you said confirms that. I just wondered what for that you confirm.
Oh, so the advice that we've received confirms that the approach that staff have taken in responding to the Waihi Dam situation is in accordance with the law in terms of the emergency provisions that sit within the Resource Management Act and appropriate for the conditions and the circumstances that were in front of us and still are.
So when you're saying that you can't release that,
When
you're saying you can't release that, what is it that you're not releasing?
Sorry, can't release the legal advice, the interpretation.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Further question, Councillor Graham.
Why can't we go in committee and get an understanding of that legal advice? Because I'm really interested in what our lawyers are saying. That doesn't mean why can't councillors know what our lawyers are saying without necessarily going to the public and compromising that advice?
I guess we could always go into committee and consider that advice, but that wasn't what was requested. You were asked. I was asked to provide you with the advice, and I'll just explain to you that I can't give you a copy of it.
No, I understand that. You can't give the public a copy, but you could give us a copy. It was confidential.
It is legally privileged, and because of that, it forms part of our litigation strategy. So,
I understand that.
I don't know. I'd have to take advice as to whether we could and whether that's appropriate. It's not something I'd put to the legal team to ask whether that would make sense or whether we could do that or whether it compromises our position. I guess the key point to it in terms of what it's telling us is the question was, could we or should we have done more? And the advice says what we did was the right thing to do.
Not put the advice going forward.
No, it's not how we respond to the situation from here. That's a completely separate discussion.
In seeking that advice on that, could I ask that you check with your legal advisors as who actually is the Hawke's Bay Regional Council? Is it the 9 elected councillors, or is it the staff employed by the council? So when you're saying that this is council's advice and council's information, whose actual information is it? And I'd like you to respond to us on that point, because it seems to me that you're making a distinction between the actual operating staff and the chief executive and the councillors in determining who is the regional council and who the advice is to when you say ours.
Sure. Yep. I can check with that. Like I say, just to be absolutely clear, what I was asked to do at the last meeting was provide you a copy of that advice, and so the difficulty in me doing that is that it then becomes a public document. So
can I ask a supplementary though? At some stage going forward, councillors will be privy to the discussion about where the thing has fallen, what our course of action is, etc., which actually I think covers Councillor Graham's request. Councillor Graham, that's sort of what you wanted to understand?
I more want to understand what we are doing about this and what our options legally are going forward.
And we're not quite there yet, are we?
No, we're not. And very, very good point. Certainly intend to bring you back in the fullness of time, more of a debrief, if you like, in terms of the breakdown of what happened and how it happened and how we're going to respond. But certainly moving forward, in fact, we're due to meet with Eastland Group tomorrow to talk about where to from here, now that the reservoir is filled and they have their dam back under control. So those discussions will be carried out in earnest, because neither ourselves nor the impression I get Eastland Group wish to see this situation arise again. So things need to change.
But councillors, you'll recall that from time to time we do bring you cases where we've had to initiate or seek your advice on initiating further enforcement, and we've always done that in public excluded, and so this would be no different to that.
I accept that. The issue for me is not one about the actual process involved in here with Waihi Dam. What the issue here for me is what information the chief executive and staff have access to within this council, which is greater than what the councillors have. Now, I've been in a number of situations where if a governor asked for information, it was provided immediately. Only in very rare and extreme cases, and demonstrably so, was it withheld. Now, I'm testing the line here. That's what I'm doing. And my view is that if it's information held by the regional council, if it has to be confidential, sure, it should be accessible to councillors. I do not like this arbitrary decision where someone in the system says, well, you can't have it, but we can. So I'm testing that. That's what I'm testing here.
Okay, your point is made, sorry, Councillor. Any other questions on this paper?
James.
Oh, sorry, James.
Councillor Belford.
You weren't finished, were you?
No.
Yeah,
okay.
I had a question about it last time.
So just in relation to the submission on freshwater reform, we've undertaken to circulate that to all members of the Regional Planning Committee tomorrow, and that's to enable enough time for people to give feedback by email or come and meet with staff if they wish to discuss any content of that, and then get a penultimate version to the Regional Planning Committee for the meeting on the 20th of April and submission to Central Government on the 22nd of April. Just would note that we had a public meeting well attended last night where the Minister outlined the reforms. Got copies of the discussion document from that meeting available if any councillor that wasn't there wishes to familiarise themselves with that.
Excuse me. Might be some lax record keeping on my part, but is there an RPC meeting tomorrow?
No, the RPC meeting is on the 20th of April, but the submission is being circulated to you tomorrow.
Oh, just to the members? Yeah. Okay.
And Mr Chairman, the final item is around the update of the butcher report, which was prepared as part of the Board of Inquiry process, and that'll be presented to to the Corporate and Strategic Committee on the 13th of April.
Councillor Belford.
So I was looking for some clarification as to what that was. I mean, there are some councillors who are aware of and maybe have read a new McFarlane report. That has been circulated in no official way to us. If you happen to find out about it by accident, which is what we did, then you would be privy to the report. But I've really failed to understand why a report of that significance, which was completed in January, would not have been brought to our attention, circulated to us all in a public manner so that it could be passed along and debated, et cetera. Now, we've done that because we've gotten access to it indirectly. But so what is being presented here is not, I'm going to be clear, is in April, is not the business plan, right? It's not the HBRC business, the revised business plan, correct? It is just a...
Okay, so Councillor, you'll recall because you instigated a request for this, but the McFarlane report, which has been on our website since January, was instigated by HBRC Limited, and that deals with on-farm profitability. So that's an update of that particular report, and it's one of the inputs, and only one of the inputs into the Jeff Butcher model around a regional economic assessment on the benefits of the Ruataniwha water storage scheme. So the Butcher report will be presented to you, as I said, at the Corporate and Strategic Committee in a couple of weeks' time, and that will obviously incorporate part of the McFarlane report, or will incorporate elements of the McFarlane report update, at which time that will be able to be received by you. But certainly in terms of why it didn't come to council and why it wasn't debated, it was never a document that was actually initiated by this council. It's not up for council debate. In any event, you can receive it or choose not to. But it's part of the numerous papers that are being prepared and updated by HBRC.
Well, then I just will note that when we have HBRC before us today, I will be raising what thought process they go through in terms of deciding what councillors see versus what farmers in Central Hawke's Bay see.
When we'll deal with that then, Councillor Bell.
Now, last item on this, at one of these meetings, I'm not sure which one it was, I raised as an action item getting a report from the port on its logistics and whether any issues were going to arise given the bumper crop coming in from the orcharding world.
You asked the question, that's right.
And there was a question, I asked for a presentation, and I thought we agreed to have such a presentation.
So, yes, Councillor, you did, and that was actually at the meeting just 2 weeks ago on the 16th of March, and I phoned Garth Cowie as a consequence of that and asked if he would be able to come today, but unfortunately he's in Auckland. So we're trying to reschedule a time for him to be able to appear in front of the council.
If I can just interrupt, just to follow up to that, because it's something of some concern to the pip fruit industry that they don't run into the log jams they had last year. So I've been inquiring in the past few days just as to how things are flowing, because we're well into the Royal Gala harvest and packing season, which is the biggest variety in the industry. And I'm not hearing any concerns being expressed at all, which is a great relief to me. The booking system that was introduced is apparently working very well. I'm told that some of the companies in the industry have actually packed out and shipped more at this point in time than they had last year. So it looks like the problems that we had last year have largely been resolved, which is very good news.
Well, certainly when I spoke to Garth, he was quite surprised that there'd been a comment made at the council meeting, because he certainly wasn't aware of any logistical difficulties around it, and was alarmed to think that maybe there was stuff going on that he wasn't aware of. But so that's reassuring, Councillor, to hear. Yeah.
I haven't seen more than 2 trucks in a row down there. I know that's unscientific, Councillor Bevan, but okay. Any other questions in regard to this item? Someone happy to move that we accept this item? Thank you, Councillor Belford. Seconder for that. Thank you, Councillor Dick. Commentary. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, no. Call for minor items, not on the agenda. We'll be with you shortly, Hawke's Bay Tourism. Get them ready to go. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. The Balance Farm Field, the winning, award-winning field day. I think that's the only one that I had.
Genesis Power.
I've got one biodiversity launch. Councillor Dick.
Oh yes, could you just give us a quick report on the meeting with Dr Smith, public meeting last night,
Right.
either in that or in your chairman's report?
Timata Park.
Park. Tear. He'll sort you out at smoko time. Other items. Okay, thank you. Let's now